Hi all, welcome to Esoteric Babble. Today's babbling, we're going to talk about Buddhism, Vedanta. Are they that different? Now, the surface response is, hey, the Buddha says there's no self, Vedanta says there's a self, therefore they are not the same. They're totally different, QED. But I think that's a very surface reading of the situation. And it might be, we might ask the question, does it matter if they're the same? I think it does, because I think it points to this idea that spiritual paths do lead to one and the same place. I heard a monk mention that reality is one, and I think he was saying that because of that fact, there can't really be multiple paths or destinations. And while I think most of us would agree that there are not multiple destinations, there could be one ultimate destination with many stops along the way. If you think about the top of a mountain as being the destination, it could be many ways up the mountain. So that is a good analogy, and that's basically the map I keep in my head. Also, it's good to keep in mind the idea in Jainism and in Buddhism, in the Udana, the idea of the elephant and the blind men. The blind men go, and of course they each feel a different part of an elephant. They want to find out, they've heard of elephants, they want to know what an elephant is like, so they each end up touching a different part of the elephant, the trunk, the tail, the leg, the body, and they think, oh, it's like a wall, it's like a pillar, it's like a snake, and so on and so forth. And at least in the Udana, something that happens that's very interesting is that they start fighting about it. And I believe, and I haven't read it in a little while, but I think the king who sees this is gladdened by that. And that's maybe a talk for a separate day, but that is an interesting commentary on how those in power benefit from strife. Like I said, that's a separate issue. But I do think that Vedanta and Buddhism are extremely close. And I think we can see just how close they are. And when I say close, I mean their methods are very similar. And I think, let's talk about the Buddha for a minute. You read this throughout the Pali Canon, that we're not to identify with the body. Rupang anatta. And here, anatta, of course, a lot of people, especially once you get into Mahayana, they start reading this as there's no self, there's no independently existing entities. But the best way to understand anatta is not me. And in the beginning of the Majjhima Nikaya, at the root, the Buddha's discussion on like the root of all phenomenon, he kind of takes us through this idea of how there's earth, and he talks about the different elements. Now, in our day, we would talk about maybe solid, liquid, gaseous, and plasma even as being a fourth state of matter, and there are more, I believe. But the Buddha starts with rupang, which means our physical body, and he says that can't be you. And you could think about this. Think about things that we do consider to be ours. You could have a car, and you say, that's my car. You could have a house, that's my house. You could plant a tree, that's my tree. You can have all kinds of things, but you know that form of possession, it can come and go. And, if you lose your car or something, it's not great, you can go on living. And, if you have like a coffee table, maybe you don't even care that much about it, and maybe you get a new one or something. There's lots of things in the external world that we clearly know are ours, but what we mean by that is sort of a possession. It's not ours in terms of, it's not part of our fundamental essence. And the Buddha actually gives he has two, what would we say, criteria. One is, if something is yours, it should be totally under your control. And he says if your body is yours, then it shouldn't actually lead you to disease. You should be able to kind of say, hey, body, be this way, don't be that way, and it would happen. But that doesn't happen. We know that. And we actually know that even, you could look at a tree outside. You could say, hey, tree, don't rot. You're rotting, stop rotting. It doesn't happen that way. And our bodies, the Buddha points out that our bodies are no more under our control actually than a plant or a car or a house. They have their own conditions and they have their own, they're just working out. They're just working out the, what would you say? I'm at a loss of words here, obviously, but they're working out its the physicality, all the chemical reactions and so on and so forth. And, the DNA is working. So we know on that level that the body isn't ours in that sense. And I think we could agree with the Buddha, though I don't think people often think of it that way. And the other thing is that anything that does not abide, anything that is changing can't be ourselves. I think this is something that Vedantists point out, is that we have, even throughout this entire process, being a baby, becoming a child and adolescent, adult, young adult, older adult, that there's an awareness throughout all of that. We know the physical body changes, the mind changes. So we know that there is this sort of persistent awareness, but there's nothing that you can really think about anywhere in the world, even conceptually, that doesn't change. And if something is changing, it isn't the same thing. This is actually kind of a problem in metaphysics proper, where you have object A. It's sort of like you have a caterpillar and then you have a butterfly, and we know there's a change, but when you stop and try to say at exactly what point the change takes place, it's actually fairly difficult. Sort of an analogy would also be, when does a creek turn into a river? Like, unless there's an arbitrary just cutoff point, it's very difficult to see these things that are in constant process. Also, dialects of language. When did Latin actually become Italian? Things of that nature. So, but we know, and so it makes sense, I guess, is what I'm trying to say, that anything that isn't staying the same, that also can't be our real self. Now, another way to think about real is just something that isn't changing. So that is how the Buddha starts with things. It's not our physical body. And then you might think, well, it's our thoughts. And the Buddha has these 4 other divisions. They're sometimes called the 5 skandhas or the khandhas. Overall, the division is nama-rupa. Nama is, rupa is the physical body that we're talking about. Nama is basically cognate with the word name, but that kind of refers to the other divisions, the mental divisions. So we know that we kind of have sensations and perceptions and, we have sensations, perceptions, we have thoughts and memories. And let's separate those. We would say that we have memories and a thinking apparatus, and we have consciousness, our own personal consciousness, which we might identify just with thinking. So, but in each of those cases, we can't bring any of those under our control, and they are not abiding. So the Buddha says they're not you. And what all of this meandering on my part is leading up to is that when you go through with all of these things, the physical body, all of these different mental components, you find nothing is you. There's no you there anymore. And that's where the Buddha leaves it. And I think, of course, we can meditate on that, and we can We can intellectually come to understand that that's true, but we can meditate and sort of really try to experience that reality. Vedanta, I think, is the very same. They have 5 koshas that they say surround the Atman. The Atman would be that awareness. They're giving a name to that awareness. But keep in mind, this Atman that Vedantas are talking about is not something that we can, it cannot be an object. It is a subject. So all the objects, these 5 koshas, the Annamaya kosha, like the body, the physical body, the food kosha, the, let's see if I remember them, the prana maya, like the vital body, maybe, the prana, the sort of the vital breath part. There's a mano maya, the mind part. And then there's a ananda maya, the blissful part, which I think we have access to when we enter deep sleep. But none of those are considered to be the real us. And I just think that that's really striking that in both cases, they've been able to go through and pare down, like all these things that are subject to change. We just say, well, they can't obviously be us. They can't be, they are objects, not subjects of our experience. So I find that remarkable. And I think that when you realize that, and this is why you might think, well, what does it even matter? It matters to me because it's good to know that we can find these teachings anywhere. I think it was it D. Elton Trueblood who said that no one is so wise that they can just, I'm massively paraphrasing here. No one is so wise that they can just sort of walk away from wisdom. You know, it doesn't matter if it's Socrates or the Buddha, or it could be a shaman. It could come from anywhere. And it's up to us to be receptive. But certainly in these cases, when there's, I think it's good to promote unity and to find points of discussion, and it just helps. I think many people are often, take for instance, here's another situation. Sometimes you'll find Christians who have never really, who are thoughtful, but they've never had, they know that they've been raised in a culture where they hear these biblical sayings all the time, and it's hard to come to them with new ears and eyes. But when you hear someone like Swami Prabhavananda talk when you hear him discuss, say, the Sermon on the Mount, all of a sudden you say, oh, wow, there's this whole new way of kind of understanding, and there's this other area, there's a whole other religion that can help us understand, and many other religions. It's not just one, but like in that's a very specific example of how our horizons can be broadened and our understanding can deepen. So I think that's one reason why Vedanta or noticing that Vedanta and Buddhism are so similar. And I think they even get more similar when you start to get into Vajrayana, like Tibetan Buddhism, and different Mahayana schools like Yogacara. When you talk about the Buddha nature, I mean, it is very, very similar. It is very striking then as well. So really, that's what I have to say. I would be interested in what your experiences are of this, if you have any passionate, if you just think I'm flat out wrong, please let me know. I'm, in all these videos I make, I am just someone who's on the path, and I think we all need to help each other out, and I'm trying to do that to the best of my ability. And every day I learn things. So yes, please, if you feel that I'm wrong, or if you have something to add to this, please do. And I'll look forward to our next discussion. I believe another topic I want to take up is meditation and sort of the Eightfold Path, or Patanjali's sort of 8-limbed yoga. Until then, a heartfelt desire for all beings everywhere to be happy. Peace.